folks, welcome back to My Kitten Reads. I'm Eleanor and this is my April reading wrap up. Now, my apologies, I've missed quite a few weeks. I've had a lot of stress, and even when I was on leave I was feeling stressed, and yeah, a lot of time has been spent trying to calm myself down and not really having it work because I was having so much stress that I was getting physically unwell. So I'm starting to feel a bit better. I did participate in April in Dewey's 24-hour readathon. I just did it very casually and didn't vlog for the first time in years. So, but I did participate. So that's great. And I did read a lot. And some of it was actually not comfort reading. So, so fascinating, right? But yes, so what did I read in April? Well, I read 13 things, so I'm quite pleased with that. It did start with comfort reading, however. I started the month with Elizabeth's Inheritance by Elaine Burkett. So this is an Austen variation, and one in which, as a child, Lizzie rescues a couple from drowning in the river near Longbourn after the rail of a bridge that they were leaning on collapses. And many, many years later, when she's a young woman, she discovers that she's inherited their estate because the husband has passed away. The wife is still alive and living in the dower house and is supported by the estate, but Lizzie now owns the estate, and so that changes her circumstances. So she has to learn how to manage the estate, and then she has to enter society as someone who is actually quite wealthy, and decide what she wants. So there is that. I re-listened to The 450 from Paddington by Agatha Christie. This is a Miss Marple novel. I re-listened to a lot of Miss Marple recently, just as a comfort thing, all via audio. So 450 from Paddington is the one where her friend, Mrs. McGillicuddy, which is a name that I love, witnesses a woman being strangled on the train that's next to her, going at a different speed. And Miss Marple, who is getting frail, engages a young woman that she knows to help her find the body and then find the murderer. Then I reread actually Earthly Delights by Kerry Greenwood. So Kerry passed away recently, which is very sad. There is apparently one Miss Fisher novel in the editing process that is coming. So we're going to get one posthumous Miss Fisher novel. Earthly Delights is the first book in her Karina Chapman series, which I've only read the once. So I thought I'd reread the first book. So that was nice. That was nice. Still prefer Miss Fisher though. Then I read It Taught Me to Hope by Jan Roland. So this one is, again, you've heard me talk about Jan Roland books a lot. Austen variation. In this one, it is set 6 years after Hunsford, in a world where Lizzie never made it to Derbyshire. In the intervening time, she has inherited Longbourn because Mr. Collins passed away before Mr. Bennet, leaving Charlotte a widow with a young daughter. I believe it was a young daughter, who has moved back in with the Lucases, although Lizzie keeps offering her a place. I think Lydia ran away. You find this all out early on. Lydia ran away and was never seen again with Wickham. And the other sisters married as they could. And now, 6 years later, Mr. Darcy has turned up in the neighbourhood again with his sister because he's found out that Lizzie's still single and he still loves her. And so they have to get to know each other again. Then I read The Next Mrs. Bennet by Shana Grandison. Again, awesome variation. This is one where Fanny Gardner compromises Mr. Bennet and then dies in childbirth with Jane. And Mr. Bennet very quickly, once he's met his new neighbours at Netherfield, who are the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire with their children, but they are they're incognito so they can relax. He meets their eldest daughter and falls in love, and she becomes the second Mrs. Bennet, which then changes both the wealth and the connections of the Bennets. Then What Ought to Have Been by M.J. Stratton, which is also an Austen variation, but a Sense and Sensibility one. You don't see those very often. I do like them. So in this one, when Lucy confides about her engagement to Edward, to poor old Eleanor, whose heart is breaking, she doesn't get the chance to ask Eleanor to keep it secret, and therefore Eleanor can tell Marianne when they have an argument about how she feels. And this leads Marianne in particular on a new path, in that she recognises her own behaviour with Willoughby, and she recognises the character of Willoughby earlier, and she is out for revenge on her behalf, but also on Eleanor's behalf. So that's what this book's about. Then I finally finished reading The Red Scholar's Wake by Elliot Boddard. This is the first chronological, I think, novel in the Zuya universe, which I've been reading. This is a novel about pirates who are living outside society, and one of our main characters is captured by them and indentured by them, and receives the opportunity to improve her lot by marrying the mine ship that is the who was the wife of one of the head pirates who has just been killed. And the opportunity is because she has skills, which means she can investigate and try and find out how that killing happened. And there's a whole bunch of internal politics with all the various pirate groups and the various authorities, etc., in the midst of which they're trying to navigate how this marriage, which is supposed to be just a contract marriage, is going to work, but they are actually attracted to each other. But there's a lot of trauma that has to be worked through. So that was very interesting, and a queer relationship, which was nice. Then I listened to The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side by Agatha Christie. This is the one where a famous movie star, Marina, has bought the old hall, and then one of the local women drops dead of an overdose of a drug in the middle of a reception. And Miss Marple is, of course, trying to figure out what happened. Then I read an actual physical book. Actually, I started another one and read a bit more of another one, but finished an actual physical book. This I read during the readathon, The Formidable Miss Cassidy by Mayhan Bowie, who's an author from Singapore. And this was a glorious little romp. It's set in the late Victorian period. And essentially Miss Cassidy who is a woman of a certain age and presentation, who is a governess companion. However, she's a governess companion who is probably a fae, but it's never outright said, but probably she's fae. And she has gone to Singapore to act as the companion for a 16-year-old girl whose mother has passed away. And the house she enters is haunted by a Singaporean demon. And so she's trying to do her job whilst investigating and trying to figure out how to get rid of this demon. There's actually a few different parts, because it actually probably nearly less than halfway through, that part of the story gets finished and it moves on to a few other adventures. But I really enjoyed it. And she's very much a middle-aged woman, no nonsense, cheerful, but firm. Your sort of typical Victorian governess. So that was a very enjoyable read, and I thoroughly recommend it. Let me see. Then the Hugo packet came out, and so I finally signed up. So the Hugo nominations came out, the Hugo packet came out. Finally signed up as a member for this year and downloaded what I wanted from the Hugo packet. And so while I had to go to Tasmania for family reasons, and so I did actually, both during the readathon and on my flights, read some Hugo reading. So I started with the novella, and this is The Butcher of the Forest by Premi Muhammad, who's an Indo-Caribbean writer. And this was a story where the main character is a sort of middle-aged woman living in a land that has been conquered by a brutal ruler. She suddenly gets taken from her home by soldiers and taken to the castle and taken in front of said ruler because their children, the ruler's children, have disappeared into the old forest. And our main character is the only person who's ever gone into the old forest and come out alive and brought out a child that's gone in there. So he is forcing her to relive her trauma and go in and get his children. And she doesn't have the option of refusing. And so she has to go and figure out her way through the old forest and into the sort of parallel world that's in there, with all sorts of awful creatures, to try and find these children and get them out, which is only semi-successful. So, yes. So that was interesting and very much a lot about trauma, and dealing with trauma and what happens when you haven't dealt with trauma and you're refusing to deal with trauma. So that was interesting. And then there was a short story, I think, by the same author, Premi Muhammad, By Salt, by Sea, by Light of Stars. And this one is a fantasy story where a wizard has lost her magical ability, and she hasn't told anybody until a new apprentice turns up on her doorstep sent by the university. And she has to figure out how to teach him without letting on that her magic is gone. So that was interesting. Then I also reread via audio The Murder at the Vicarage, which is one of my favourite Miss Marple stories by Agatha Christie, in which the local church warden is shot dead in the vicarage study, right across the road from Miss Marple. And then I finished off with another short story from the Hugo list, which is 5 Views of the Planet Tartarus by Rachel K. Jones. This was really depressing, in which it's basically describing coming into this planet when you're a prisoner. It's a prison planet, and describing what happens when you get there. And essentially you're pumped full of drugs where you will live forever, put in an environmental suit, and then tossed off into space to stare into the abyss, conscious and never dying. Yeah, it sounds pretty awful. It was a bit of a story. I wasn't, well written, but I wasn't hugely fond of it. So those are the 13 things that I read in April. 3 of them were by BIPOC authors. One of them had a queer romance, so doing okay on my diversity goals, I guess. Probably need to do better still. But Hugo reading. So yeah, that's what I read. Some really enjoyable reads, some definite comfort reading, including the Agatha Christie audiobooks. Hopefully my stress levels will go down a bit now. I've gotten through some of the personal family stuff as much as I can at this point. The election's over and it went the way I wanted it to, which means some of my job stress will reduce. Some of my job stress is, however, not going to reduce unless certain things happen. But I can't talk about those. So, yeah. But also the intensity of my actual work is going to start dropping for a little bit. Well, for a couple months. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. But yes, so yeah, I'm hoping my ankle is feeling better. Not perfect, but better. So I am hoping that I will actually be able to get back to the gym and the treadmill, even if I take it really, really slow to start with. See what my chiropractor says tomorrow. Which hopefully means Hugo reading will happen on my Kindle at the gym. Which fingers crossed. I'm starting with the three, as usual, the three short fiction categories. But yes, anyway, before I ramble further, and because I have Motorsport that I need to watch in half an hour, please like and subscribe, and always happy to chat books in the comments if you've read any of these, and I will see you all again really soon. Bye.